Hello, Patreon! We are back again for The Facts of Geek Life. I am the titular Charlie Carden, your regular secret friend here on this delightful network. And we are diving into the third of three segments about the fantastic television program that is a favorite of myself and my co-host. That we've been talking about since we got this show rolling. I am joined again by the professor himself, Jonathan the Sned Snedeker. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, Charlie. Thanks for having me back yet again.
Oh, you bet. And our next project is so delicious. I feel like we should tease it, but I almost feel like we should keep it a secret. But we'll worry about that later. But anyway, this is our final discussion. We'll talk about three more episodes of the 1982-83 science fiction series Voyagers, which was on NBC of that year, starring John Eric Hexum, the late John Eric Hexum, handsome man, attended Michigan State, I found out, just like myself. And he was on the football team. Did we talk about that last time around?
I think it's come up, but maybe not. But
Gotcha.
as you know, I am a Spartan as well.
I am aware of that. So we share a certain bond with the late good. Mr. Hexum.
I know. I miss him already.
Yes, indeed. So anyway, we're going to jump right in. As always with this show, when I have a guest on, I put it in the guest hands to choose the anywhere between 3 and 5, and sometimes even 6 or 7 episodes if it's a series that's a half an hour, so it's shorter content. I put it back upon you. So Jonathan chose these 3 episodes to wind out the 21. There were 20 episodes season or series, I should say. But the first episode we're talking about is Old Hickory and the Pirate. It was episode 8, which aired on November 28 of 1982. So picture the scene. New Orleans, Louisiana, in 1815. The War of 1812 has not ended, one would assume, in 1812. And the British control the city. Bogg and Jeff help Meriwether Lewis and William Clark in the Northwest Passage in 1803, just before they go to the Bahamas in 1798 to keep Jean Lafitte from being convicted of piracy in his future. They also encounter a group of pirates led by Black Bill Scroggins, and after a swashbuckling scuffle on the beach, Lafitte goes to New Orleans, and the Voyagers jump ahead to the Battle of New Orleans and meet Andrew Jackson. Wow. A lot going on here.
Yes. Yes. And all I have to say is arg. There's pirates everywhere. There's pirates, yes. And in this one, one of the things that we pick up right away is that there's going to be a lot happening. A very swashbuckling turn of events for our heroes, the Voyagers. And one of the things that I really liked about this one from a fashion sense, because I like to bring fashion into this. You know I'd like to do this because
you bet.
When you're traveling through time, what do you wear, right?
Apparently you wear the same thing no matter what. But this was an episode where Boggs' pirate Han Solo attire came into synchronization with what everybody else was wearing. It really worked out.
He was in fashion, and he even references that.
Yeah.
As part of the episode, it's like, yes, how do you think I picked these clothes? I am a former pirate, sort of.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
So anyway, so Phineas finally blends in. And I thought this was a fun episode, not to be taken too seriously, even though they always drag history into it. But let's start first with the pirates, right? They're on the beach. They're stumbling into these pirates that are burying treasure. Right? Isn't that what pirates always did in those days?
Well, yeah, they bury it for what? So they bury it so they can come back for it later. You know, you'd think if you, as a pirate, you would hit one big score, but they must hit a score, and then it's not enough, or it gets split up, or they got to fix their ship up, and so it got to go back and get more score. You know?
Yeah. So I guess X marks the spot on this one because they eventually go dig up that treasure, but before all that happens, Jeffrey has to very quickly drag them away. Didn't he pull the Omni away and do something at this point? Which typically he doesn't drive on these things. Usually Phineas does. But anyway, they end up
Right.
in the Battle of New Orleans. It's raging, and they do this very quickly. They leave the pirates behind, and they end up with General Andrew Jackson, and he needs their help as well. I guess there's a problem with the muskets and the powder and the flints. They don't have what they need to fight the battles, I guess.
They didn't double check their packing list before they left the house. That is like Traveler 101. Like I'm going on one of my many work trips tomorrow, and I have my suitcase on the bed, and I go through shelf by shelf, make sure I don't miss anything. So if I was going off and I'm not looking in my drawer where I'm keeping the powder, and not looking in my drawer where I'm keeping my flintlocks or whatever, you're going to end up in this kind of situation. It's just poor planning.
Well, one of the things that sticks out right away, and it's a bit odd, is they bump into a revolutionary colonist who is very quick to tell the Voyagers about a secret resistance meeting.
Yeah,
that's usually what you do when you meet people for the first time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I have no idea.
Them to the meeting. Yeah.
Yes, so, hi. I'm a filthy street urchin. Would you like to join my secret rebellion? That's what that whole scene was. It was like, oh, and he was just kind of Johnny Exposition. He was like, and all this stuff happened. Blah 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 blah.
So anyway, one of the things that stuck out to me early in the episode 2 was they confront the pirates, and then they have to run away from the pirates.
Confront and evade. And evade.
And when they're running down the beach before they leave the pirates behind, they're running in the water, which makes absolutely no sense to me. Because you ever try to run in water
in boots,
and then the pirates are running in the water? There's a perfectly good beach next to them, but they just got to run in the water. That stuck out. It's like, why are they running in the water when there's a perfectly good beach to run down? But
foolish.
But they did get away. One of the things that Jeffrey Jones does in this episode is he dons a pirate hat that has a very big feather in it.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and he calls himself Jeffrey Jamaica Jones.
How did I miss that?
You remember that?
Oh no, that went right by. So that's what the big feather means, that you get to you get to do a little pirate cultural appropriation and just give yourself a name.
Yeah, because what's happened is Jean Lafitte and Phineas Bogg have been taken captive, and they're going to be pirates. They're going to be forced into the pirate life, and these two wenches who kidnap these men when they come into port, and then force them to become pirates for this pirate. What was the pirate's name?
Black Bill Scroggins. It was in the
Scroggins.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. The guy with the eye patch that kept flipping up a little.
Oh yeah. Did it switch eyes like Nick Fury from Marvel?
Almost. But so anyway, they're being held captive, and they're going to be forced to become pirates. And then here comes Jeffrey Jamaica Jones into the. I think, was it two sisters or two wenches? Or
it was. I wasn't super sure about that, but my first super big note, and I noticed this in that episode preview clip before the credits air, is that the main pirate wench is a captain of the Enterprise. Is the actress is named Trisha O'Neill, played
really?
Captain Rachel Garrett, captain of the USS Enterprise 1701C in the episode Yesterday's Enterprise in the third season of Star Trek The Next Generation. Widely regarded to be one of the best episodes of that series. It was the episode that brought back Denise Crosby as the then deceased Tasha Yar in an alternate history kind of thing. But yeah, and poor Captain Garrett in that episode met her end by a flying piece of shrapnel to the head. So she had much better luck being kind of a boss bitch, for lack of a better expression, in this deal.
Seems to own it well, because even at one point, I think it was Jeffrey Jones says there are a couple of these bar wenches are tough chicks.
Tough chicks.
Which,
Right.
which I'm sure, back in the 1700s,
1790s.
that was the phrase that was used, or the word that was used to describe women regularly. I'm sure
Right.
people knew exactly what they were talking about. But anyway, yeah, they were a couple of tough chicks. So after meeting Jean Lafitte, right, and convincing him not to become a pirate,
Right.
and telling him there were big things waiting for him in New Orleans, right? So that's in 1798.
Yeah.
Then we jump to the Battle of New Orleans, which is in 1815, which is 17 years later.
Right.
And here come Phineas and Jeffrey in the same exact clothes they were wearing 17 years ago.
And haven't aged, even though Jeffrey is 10.
Yeah,
He's not 27.
And they do allude to that with some tongue in cheek, because Jean Lafitte is
good
going.
living.
Yes, it's like, yeah, pretty much, right. So I thought that was kind of funny that. So in this episode too, right? They helped them win this battle. I guess it was a key battle, and the thing I found a little odd was Phineas was actually fighting in the battle, loading the cannon.
Yeah, I did notice that they were like,
while
"Hey,
Jeffrey laid on the ground and watched it all."
This is fascinating.
Which was kind of odd to me, because usually they stay out of that stuff. They don't go into the fray. But
right, kind of like again in Star Trek, kind of the temporal prime directive. Don't interfere with historical events, just like the regular prime directive, where you don't interfere with a primitive culture's machinations. It's kind of the same thing. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Let's see from my notes. Well, the guy who was Old Hickory, or General Jackson, was another Star Trek actor named Lance Legault. He was a Klingon, I think, more than once in TNG. Very Klingon, like big, so kind of fits the bill. Yeah.
While we're on the subject of him too, because he was what I would consider a notable guest because of other things that he did in his career. Right, he was in Buck Rogers.
Of course he was.
Yes, he was.
Absolutely.
He was in the first episode of the second season of Time for Hawk,
which we've not gotten to yet, because we were going
you and I never get to because we're moving on.
Yes, you're right.
But even so, he played a character called Flag, and then he was also, you mentioned, he was on Star Trek, or was it Next Gen? Which one?
Next Gen.
Right. So he was also on Battlestar Galactica.
Yes.
And he was in 3 episodes. Yes. And he had a reoccurring role as well in a couple of, he was in episode 4, 15, and 18 during that series. Wow. And he had he had a reoccurring reoccurring role as MAGA. So he was MAGA before MAGA was MAGA.
No.
Isn't that funny?
Ouch. That stings. Yeah. That's that has aged poorly.
All right.
Oh, my goodness.
One last footnote on his career. He also was Elvis's stunt double.
In Elvis films?
Yeah, in Kissing Cousins.
Oh.
Yeah.
Which is a terrible name for a film.
If you looked at him and thought of Elvis, the resemblance was uncanny. Actually, it wasn't even canny.
It was uncanny in so much that there was no
really
can.
Look like him. They must have really put some color in his hair, because he's pretty gray. So, and then another notable guest that we had on there too. There was, during the battle, they kept going, "Well, Mr. Bundy." Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, Mr. Bundy.
Mr. Bundy. So he was played by William Bryant, who was a long time extra. And this is his only episode of Voyagers, unfortunately, but he was also in Buck Rogers.
It's Universal. I think Universal Pictures must just own all these guys.
He was in season 2, episode 9, The Hand of the Grau. And he played Cowan, right? So that was one. And then he also, too, they must have been under contract.
I think so.
He did Battlestar Galactica, and he was in season 1, episode 12, which is Fire in Space. And he was the fire launcher in that episode. So if he looks familiar, he's been in other things.
Right. It's the Universal at that time also my beloved Rick Springfield was a Universal Contract TV player back in those days. So
Sure.
was on Battlestar, was on Wonder Woman, was on some other different stuff. So yeah, it was just like, it's, they're like, hey, we got a thing to stick you in, and so you're set for that. So yeah, there was a lot of great, the fog was hilarious in that whole
Yes.
third act. I love
Yeah.
that. And it was just a lot of stock footage because it was super grainy. They tried to stretch it like, here, the sun's coming up. No, the moon's coming up.
Yeah, the Indian trick about you can't hear them
The
coming
Indian
was so
trick.
dumb. I mean,
Oh
come
my
on,
gosh.
really. Yeah. Oh, we're gonna just believe the lies and run away. That's
Right.
always good. Yeah, because that's what trained military men do.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
It worked on Lewis and Clark.
little tongue in cheek there. Couple other things that sort of stuck out when they were battling the pirates.
Oh my God, I was going to say that too. Good Lord. That was a long, poorly choreographed scene with a lot of ADR. It was
and
just
then
the
at one
vocals were all over
point,
the place.
Phineas grabs one of the pirates' nose and then threatens to chop it off.
I've got your nose.
Yeah, exactly. There's that going on. So all in all, this episode, I give it like a 5 out of 10. I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think it was their worst episode, but it wasn't clearly their best work.
Right. There was a lot of gaping plot hole nonsense, even for the fact of the show. Where it's like they stuck in the Lewis and Clark thing, which is like, okay, it's like they're always looking to stick in here's a plot piece, let's stick that in there or whatever. So
and then the high road, low road. Well, let's go down to the river. No, let's go along the ridge. What is that? What
I don't know.
Oh, we found the river that saved them.
There we go. Didn't they have Sacagawea with them, or was
where was she? I didn't see her. Maybe she was one of those hiding Indians. I don't know.
Probably so.
Yeah.
Granted,
that was back when they used the word Indians. Now she'd be a Native American.
Yes, indigenous person.
Yeah, there you go.
So yes, there you go. So yeah, I would agree with you. I think 50% is a good mark out of 100% for this one.
Good.
It was not exactly
right on target with that one.
What I would call maximum effort. All right, well let's move on to episode 12. Buffalo Bill and Annie play the palace from January of 1983. In 1887 in England, the Voyagers must prevent a wedding between England's Princess Victoria and Duke Michael of Russia. Queen Victoria has invited Buffalo Bill and Annie Oakley to perform a Wild West show. A shooting competition has been arranged between the Duke and Annie, but the Duke's men kidnap Oakley to avoid the possibility of the Duke losing. Ooh. Outnumbered, Bog and Jeff time jump into Africa. That's what you were thinking about when Joffrey had to activate the Omni, because Bog was knocked out in the explosion in the tent. There you go. So they end up in the bush in Africa in 1913 and have to help out Dr. Albert Schweitzer treat a dying chief, where they have a witch doctor berating them the whole time, saying the Voyagers are slave traders because Schweitzer doesn't have the right medicine.
Mm-hmm.
But when the aid does finally arrive with the Voyagers, the aid of the Voyagers, they're able to save the chief, and then they leap out, go back, free Annie Oakley from the Russians in time for her to beat the Duke in the shooting match, and then they expose the kidnapping to the Queen, who breaks off the marriage of alliance with the Russians. Wow. Layers.
All I have to say is yikes. All hell is breaking loose.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. Yikes. We're at war. They drop into the war.
I said World War I, 0 stars, do not recommend. The trench warfare and oh my God, bad
it's
stuff.
Like, yikes, don't let the princess marry the Russian. Yikes. There's a yikes at every turn.
So many yikes.
Yeah, and so it's the future Queen Victoria. That's who the princess is, right?
Right.
And if she marries Grand Duke Michael, that's going to screw up all of her life as being a great queen, I guess.
Right, and that's how they walk into this alt future where the Russians, the English are fighting in the Russian Revolution. It's a whole big mess.
Uh-huh. So they go from the shooting contest at the palace, right, and then our heroes must race to Africa,
right,
to save Dr. Albert Schweitzer, because he's in imminent danger.
Right.
Because the medicine isn't making it to him because of the slave traders. Right. So, and then This is all because of my friend, the witch doctor.
Right. Ooh,
Right.
ooh, ah,
Right.
ting, tang, walla, walla, bing, bang.
And then,
There you go.
yikes, there's actually are slave traders because we do run into those folks.
Oh my gosh.
I know.
It's a mystery.
I know.
How did that
So,
happen like that?
so, so fortunately, our heroes once again are able to solve all the problems that they run into, including the shotgun wedding, so
Right.
to speak, that may be forced upon the future queen. So there are a lot of twists and turns in this one too. Like there's some things that I didn't understand, and maybe I'll never understand. Some of it was why is Annie Oakley wearing spats? I just didn't know that was a fashion. I like
I,
fashion, and she's
I,
wearing spats
I
through.
mean, it's entirely possible that this could have been, raiding the costume closet at Universal and
Think
be like,
about
"Here, try this."
Well,
Yeah,
think about what they were up against because they're traveling through time and they have to have costume changes all the way along. So
right.
very tricky. One thing that stuck out to me was Jeffrey's blue cowboy hat. Didn't understand how they had that. Was that a thing back then? I don't know of
Blue
any.
hats,
He had a blue cowboy hat.
not any Western I
I
can think of.
know that was part of his Western outfit. Now, Boggs looks good in his silk, you know,
Right.
handkerchief that goes
Yeah.
well with the satin band around his cowboy hat.
It seems a little fancy for a
But
cowboy, doesn't it?
but did you happen to catch Boggs when he put on those big gloves? And he wore those big gloves a lot. And I kept wondering why he was wearing those big gloves. And then he had to climb a rope.
Oh, there
And
you
then
go.
I knew why he had to wear those gloves.
How did he know?
Those were giant gloves. When you watch that episode, those gloves go easily halfway up his arm.
So not really. They're actually it's a second sleeve.
I don't know. It just
Oh my gosh.
But I guess you need them when you climb a rope. And then another thing too I didn't understand was around Annie Oakley's neck, there's like a coin stuck to her neck, and it looks like Joseph Stalin on the
Quit
coin.
stalling.
I couldn't figure that one out. Wasn't she known for shooting coins out of the air? I think that was something.
I don't. It was certainly impressive at the end of the match how she did all her shooting from horseback and shot what were they shooting, like little commemorative plates? That was the shooting competition.
Yeah, they were shooting plates that were up on those poles. Yeah, and unfortunately for the Grand Duke, he missed a couple. He wasn't a
Right.
crack shot. And then Annie Oakley, I didn't think it was really fair for her because she rode in on a horse and she was really close to him. She shot them all on horseback.
Right.
So she didn't have to shoot at distance, but she did have the horse jumping up and down.
Well, I was going to say, yeah, if they didn't put that in the rules, then she just do whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there's a brave rescue, big fist fight, and she at the end has to, she has to shoot ropes down and make hay fall on one of the attackers. I mean, there's just a whole lot of different stuff.
Yeah, well, good grief, she was kidnapped.
Right.
Thank goodness she got her pistols back. But
right.
Other things that were in this episode that stuck out to me. So they had this party right after this Wild West show, and they're all at this party at the castle. And at one point, a plate goes by, and Jeffrey says, "Are these crumpets?" And then he takes one and eats it. It looks like an English muffin to me.
Either English muffin toast or it looks like garlic bread. That's what I said to April when we were watching it. I'm like, is that what tea and crumpet? I guess I've never seen one. I betray my English roots. I don't really know what a crumpet looks like, so shame on me.
Well, it looked like an English muffin to me, which is all right because I do like English muffins.
Well, maybe it is the same thing, and that's just what we call it over here.
It could be. I always thought crumpets were like cookies or something, but I don't know. I'll have to do some work on that.
Yes, please.
You decide. You decide if it's the English muffin or crumpet.
Oh my goodness!
Another thing too that we learned is that Jeffrey has insane magic skills.
Oh yes, he's doing the sleight of hand.
He can do the sleight of hand with the coin when he's trying to trick his way out of a situation with being held captive with the witch doctor. So all in all, we're learning all these things that our heroes can do.
Right.
And then I learned too, and it's sort of an Indiana Jones style reference, but Phineas Bogg is good with a whip.
Yes,
I
you're
know.
right. Bingo. Yeah, they were.
He's very threatening because
I guess
everybody did. As soon as he picked up that whip, everybody did what he asked.
I was going to say yes. Whips were very big in the early '80s. Yeah, I love in the Congo village. There are none of the African tribes people speak with any kind of accent, and there's also a steady drum beat. No
Always.
matter what's going on, there's
I
drums in
know.
the distance. So I'm
Yeah.
like, okay. I think you may be working a little too hard to establish setting. Like
Yeah.
nothing but drumming.
What are they saying now?
Yeah, right. Hold on. And I noticed that the chief had. It was funny. He had a hole for an earring, but it wasn't like one of those big disc ones. It was like he
Uh-huh.
probably wore a stud. When he's hanging out in clubs in L.A. When he's not on
He's
set.
ahead of his time.
Oh my gosh, way
Well,
ahead. So,
one thing that didn't make sense to me at one point was when the natives were in the village and they were holding them captive. Shorts, like short dress for the men, was pretty common, right? You could see their
sure.
legs, right? But when they were going through the jungle, suddenly they were all in like these long dresses. And
Got to protect. They had to change into their excursion
I
gear.
guess
Your excursion
Yes, I
loincloth.
had no idea that the natives, when they got restless, put on long gowns.
Well, maybe it was if they were
Hunting,
restless.
spinning. Yeah. So that was something else I happened to pick up on. I thought that this episode jumped around too much.
Yeah.
The other thing too was I felt it was a bit corny at times, beyond their usual corn. I felt it was a little over the top. This was their first episode of 1983, so
Right.
maybe they were trying to get off on the right foot.
Right.
Nothing too heavy. Honestly, this was actually lower than a 5 for me.
Ouch.
This was like a 4. I mean,
Oh boy.
I was disappointed in this one just because I didn't feel like they really did anything other than, Jeffrey got a new cowboy outfit and Phineas did too. Annie Oakley, if she can shoot her way out, she could probably fight her way out too. Those people didn't seem too tough to me.
Yeah.
And
It's a little dainty.
yeah. But there are a couple of good things to take away from this, though. Christopher Carey, who played Albert Schweitzer, right? He is. We're going to run into him in Batman 66.
Nice.
I spilled the beans.
That is our next project.
Yes.
We're taking on Batman. The classic Batman series is going to be our next shared project. Publication date TBD.
Oh, it's going to be great. And then he plays Angus Ferguson in season 2, episode 21, The Impractical Joker. So we may end up there, but right now we're going to focus on season 1. Also, he was in the Time Tunnel, which you and I have talked about.
Right.
He played Merlin, and he had a top billing role in that one.
Oh boy,
Merlin, because it was Merlin the Magician. So it was all about him in season 1, episode 27 of the Time Tunnel.
Nice.
Yes. Now, another character actor in this was Tom Troop. He was a slave trader. And he was in the original series of Star Trek. He played Lieutenant Harrell in the Arena episode, which is season 1, episode 18.
Oh, you bet.
Yes,
Kirk and the Gorn. I watched that one not long ago myself.
That's a good one.
He was, the whole first act of that episode, they were on the destroyed Cestus 3 starbase, and there were a couple of disposable crew people. Like, I think Lieutenant Harrow must have been the red shirt that beamed down with him, because he got zapped very early on. So it's probably him.
So he did make it into that series, though. So watch for him there, because you never know where these people are going to turn up.
All right, so. Six Degrees of Star Trek. It's a new game we have over on Code 47, our Star Trek show.
So all in all, not
big. It's it's the Congo bit that really kills it.
Yeah,
because it's just with the drums and the tribes people being so completely. They're not even trying to make it anything but like after school special.
I think you're absolutely right, because they tried to work in some history, but they just sort of glossed over it and it didn't turn into what they wanted it to be. Left a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of holes. And
a lot of holes.
If they should have just stuck with the Wild West, I think it would have worked better.
Well, I mean, most episodes of this show split up, time periods or whatever, except for the trial episode, which we had, which all took place in, the nexus of time and with
Right.
Boggs' trial, but it was also a clip show.
Right.
So in some ways, even though it was like, hey, it's 42% new footage and the rest of it is clips, in their first season. So yeah, but sometimes they just kind of go too far afield. So, well, this next one, and I know that you have a special surprise to show us. Now, don't precipitate it,
Not
but
yet.
this one is pretty unique because they work in a time sequence in 1970, which we learned in episode 1 is the threshold of how far the Omni can take them in time.
Right.
Now, we do know that Bog picking up Jeffrey in 1982 was a fluke, but other than that, for normal operating procedure of the Omni, it can only go to 1970, which is what happens here. But let me read the summary, because naturally there's 2 time periods. Episode 18 is All Fall Down from March of 1983. In June of 1938, in Pompton Lakes, New Jersey, the Voyagers see Joe Louis training for a boxing match. When Bog knocks down Louis in a practice bout, meaning Joe Louis, decides to quit boxing. Fearing the coaches will hurt Bog, Jeff time jumps them to an airplane over Nevada in 1970. How does they just like, and if you ever look at the Omni, it just looks like a sundial with you never see them actually operated. It's just like, whoop, we're gone.
I noticed that there's months on it now. You can see May clearly.
I did see that. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so they're enhancing it a bit. I
guess. But at any rate, of course, on this flight, something wacky's going on. There's an aircraft hijacker who releases gas and knocks out everybody conveniently except for Jeff. An air traffic controller on the ground helps Jeff land a Boeing 747 with future President Jimmy Carter on board, or it's heavily implied. Heavily implied.
We'll get to that.
We'll get to that. But they do hop back to 1938, and they convince Joe Louis not to listen to the claims of racial superiority about his German opponent, Max Schmeling. Bog and Jeff help train Louis, and on June 22, Louis wins against Schmeling and retains his title of heavyweight champion of the world. And I have to say right off the bat, this episode has my favorite landing. They fall through the air and somehow fall into an airplane in flight from nowhere. That was truly spectacular because they
even reference it. Like,
right.
Oh, we've never done that before.
Right. But if you look at the shot, it's like, it's really a straight, it's a shot and not necessarily seeing the top of the screen.
They usually come flying in. Yeah.
And they just drop in. So that was spectacular on its own.
2-foot drop. That was all.
Exactly. So anyway,
on cushy carpeting.
It was perfect.
Here's the thing about this plot that I really like. It's a very feasible plot in many, many aspects. First, you have the Brown Bomber, right? Boxer Joe Louis, who's a heavyweight boxer and a national hero, right?
Right.
That's a good slice of history, and he needs to knock out the Nazis. I mean, that's what life is all about. I mean, we're here to knock out the Nazis. So this plot line is quite good, right? So Max Schmeling has already beat him once. And that's true right out of history. So they're having this rematch now in 1938. And Max Schmeling can't wait to have this fight, I'm sure, because he thinks he's going to win. And guess what? We find Joe Louis has his doubts, which I'm sure he probably did.
Right, of course.
Think about it. I mean, as a boxer, you have to feel invincible. I'm sure losing a fight like that made it very hard on him to go back and have that rematch. I'm sure, there's that adrenaline rush, like, I got to get back there. I got to beat this guy. But there's also that self-doubt that creeps in. And I think that's pretty accurate as far as history goes. I think our heroes have landed in a point in time where they can be useful. Right. So here they are. And then to sort of help facilitate our heroes into the boxing realm, they actually create a persona for Bog that he's German, which he sort of pulls off, but it's schlocky. But schlocky in this case is okay because, hey, this is how else are they going to get him into the ring with the heavyweight champ? Right? They're not going to just let anybody in there.
And they still can't explain what they're doing there because they're in a
Right.
closed camp, and says to be like, well, where's the sparring partner for him?
Right.
The manager, Joe's main coach, again, another Star Trek Next Generation guy, played an admiral in a couple of different episodes. So very, very august presence, very, very, very flag officer, very admiral. So that was a good fit.
And then he gets into the ring with him and he knocks him down.
Oops.
Now, here's the thing that I thought was kind of funny, because before he gets into the ring, he takes a swing at Jeffrey and can't hit him. Did you see that?
I did see that. It was like, what would happen if you would have clocked him?
So
smack a child. Very nice.
Look at it from this perspective. He can't hit Jeffrey. How the heck did he land one on Joe Louis?
Oh, I guess. Oh, boy.
Really? That's reaching. But he knocks down the champ in a very convincing way, because he actually looks pretty good on his feet as a boxer.
Right.
So maybe he's had some boxing in his background. I don't know.
Right. Could be. I mean, he was a football star at MSU. So, yeah.
So in this episode 2, since, I always focus on the fashion end of things, because traveling through time does require fashion changes.
Of course.
Finally, Jeffrey's striped shirt fits in.
Oh, wow.
When he lands in 1970, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
His shirt is suddenly in the right period.
That indestructible shirt that somehow gets destroyed and rebuilt and laundered, and
the nice thing about this episode is now we've come full circle, because when the pirate won, Phineas had his day with his outfit, right? Now Jeffrey's had his day with his outfit.
And on a high note, my goodness.
Now, one of the things I liked about this episode too is, since they landed in 1938 with Joe Louis, there's hats. Hats are back.
Hats are great.
Right. You've got the pork pie, right? You've got flat caps. You got newsies. You got all these really cool hats that all these people around Joe Louis are wearing. I don't remember Joe Louis wearing a hat, but I remember a lot of his people were wearing hats.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're into hats, which I'm into hats. So,
I know. You've got a great newsy hat. That's a good look on you that I see when you and I hang out. Totally.
Now, I always kind of look for some of those oddities. And in this episode, one of the things that surprised me was that Boggs can do a backflip.
That was pretty crazy that his stunt double could do that.
Right, it was impressive. He goes into that sparring match with Joe Louis, and he does a backflip, standing backflip, and it's him. So
was it really him? I don't know.
I believe it was him. I believe he could do it.
I don't know. I don't know.
Looking at the build of the person that did it, it looks, I swear it's him. So you decide.
We'll never know.
I know.
I know. You know what? If you believe it enough in your heart,
I believe it. I still believe in Santa Claus, very much so, because he's real too.
Oh, absolutely. Right? He's a Voyager. That's how he gets around. All the children of the world.
They haven't crossed paths with him, and actually, I think they did. All right. So
yes.
So that's the first thing. Now, another thing that you mentioned already is that Jeffrey lands the 747.
It was great. He did a great job.
He did. He stepped on those brakes. He just kept stepping on those brakes.
I mean, the way the air traffic controller talked him through it, it looks like it's super easy. Flip this switch, turn this dial. I'm like, man, anybody could do that. And this was back in the old days where stuff wasn't even really computerized, because it was 1970. So it was a plane from the 1960s. So, I mean, I think about how much easier it must be. Those guys are probably sleeping up there. What a cushy gig.
I know.
I'm sorry if
you land themselves.
If you're listening to this at some point in the future off of our Patreon feed, feel free to @me on Twitter if it still exists at that time at the C3, and you can tell me how you really feel about pilots of commercial airplanes.
We'll get to that later. So anyway, something else I learned in the process of looking at this episode too. Did you know this? It's a bit of trivia. Joe Louis's real last name was Barrow.
Barrow.
His name was Joe Louis Barrow. I never knew that.
Borrow as in like borrower and lender?
Like a wheelbarrow. Yeah, it's Barrow.
Barrow borrow.
I know. And the other thing I learned about him too, because I did a little research on him, because I'm like, I don't know a whole lot about Joe Louis. I know that he spent a lot of time in Detroit. He's not
Yep.
actually. He wasn't
He's
born.
got the fist.
Yeah, he
We've
wasn't
got that right
born in
downtown.
Detroit, but yeah, they had the Joe Louis Arena, and I've been in that. So
Oh
he
yeah.
was also a good golfer and was sponsored on the PGA and helped break the color barrier
What? I did
on the
not know.
PGA. Yes,
That's
he did
fascinating.
participate. Yes. One other thing too. You mentioned this, and I'm going to go ahead and show this. Right. So when they're on the plane at the very end,
Last shot.
hold this up. Right. This gentleman gets off the plane. He is an actor. His name is Walt Hanna, and he has only 3 film credits, and he was Jimmy Carter for all 3.
It's like a guy who plays Elvis in something.
Yes,
You know?
so that's all he does, and he just sort of shows his face. He doesn't really act. He just sort of walks through.
No ADR, no
I don't think he
dubbing.
gets any lines. I don't know.
Yeah.
I haven't watched the other 2 things that he's in, but it doesn't seem like he gets much. But that photo I just showed you, it is actually an autograph photo, and you can buy it for $4.49 on eBay.
Oh, all right. And it's autographed by the actor or autographed by Jimmy Carter?
Autographed by the actor Walt Hanna, and it's also will be shipped to you for an additional $16.25. So.
Oh, he's really. I sell on eBay all the time, and yes, we do pad the shipping sometimes, but that's a little bit beyond the pale. I'm not buying that.
That photo must weigh a lot.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Oh my gosh,
you can't put it in a frame. Can't put it in a frame. It'll fall off the wall.
It must. Made of real lead.
Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah.
And Jimmy Carter is pretty much our oldest living president. Yeah. I think he's presently in hospice care, but he's still with us.
He is,
and he's over. I think he's over 100, or he is 100.
We'll have to look into that. Actually, maybe people will put that in the link as well on Twitter if Twitter still exists.
Yes. If you're listening to this in the future, because eventually all of our Patreon feed will find its way onto our network feed, so you'll be able to sample this further on down the road. Anyway,
so a couple of quick things. Notable guests. All right. So Michael Swan is the co-pilot. He gets lines. This guy. His name is co-pilot Mike Dorfman.
Oh, and a character name. Impressive.
Yes, and because he comes out of the cabin, right, and confronts the bomber who's on the plane.
Right.
And he has several lines he gets to say before the captain comes out. So co-pilot Mike Dorfman also appeared in Galactica 1980.
Man.
He had a reoccurring role in season 1, episodes 4 and 5. It's the Super Scouts, and he was Deputy Collins in 2 episodes there. So, he was Super Scouts 1 and 2. And then Jim B. Smith, right? He was on ground control.
Major Tom?
He didn't talk. No, that other guy actually is an actor. Is like L.Q. Jones, I think, or something like that. I'll have to look him up here real quick. But he took his name from his first character that he ever played. That wasn't his real name. So
his nom de plume, his traveling name.
He's the guy that talked him down. But the other guy sitting next to him who doesn't say a word, he's ground control number 2. He was in Buck Rogers, and he was in season 1, episode 7, The Unchained Woman, which we did.
We did do that one.
With
my goodness,
Curtis.
Oh
right?
my.
Right.
I love that episode.
Captain. He's the shuttle captain who's on the shuttle with the other guy trying to get the shuttle to work. Remember, there's a black guy and a white guy. Well,
right.
Jim B.
He was not the black guy.
Yeah, he was the white guy. Yeah, Jim B. Smith was the white guy.
Oh my God! It's too funny. All these Universal productions.
I know.
The late 70s and early 80s just had a rotating list. And Star Trek was very much the same. Yeah. You ended up seeing from TNG to DS9 to Voyager, just a lot of the same people just rolling out through.
I like to share it here because those of the folks that tune into your Patreon, they can look for these people in other places. It's sort of like a Where's Waldo. You never know where these people are going to pop up again.
Well,
you don't recognize them.
You'll always be able to find Jeffrey in that contest of Where's Waldo because of that shirt. Oh man! Okay, so let's rate this episode. Best of the bunch, without a doubt.
I gave it a 10.
Oh yes, wow, solid
I
performance.
gave it a 10, and here's why. Because everything that happened was plausible. Even Jeffrey landing the plane,
Right, he didn't
which
do
could be
anything
construed
crazy.
as no, he had to step on those brakes hard, push them to the floor, boy. So,
Right,
because basically they can walk you through landing a 747.
right,
They can. And
and then they
did you
showed you.
see the ground control number one? He was like, whew, at the end. He didn't let it out. He didn't let Jeffrey know because he didn't want to panic him. But boy,
Right.
he was sweating under his collar. He said,
Sweat. It was yeah. It was like
ooh,
airplane. The
ooh.
the
Yeah.
sweat.
Oh, speaking of airplane, ground control number two sitting next to him looks a lot like Lloyd Bridges, which is
Yes, that's what I was thinking. I'm like,
thank you,
they
thank
couldn't
you.
have, they couldn't have snuck Lloyd Bridges into this one. So,
No, that was Jim B. Smith. Yeah,
oh my gosh, Jim
I
B.
know,
Smith.
I know.
Oh, crazy stuff. Well, cool. Well, this was awesome, and I'm
Thank you,
glad.
Charlie.
I'm glad that we spaced it out and did this over 3 episodes. I have always loved this show. It's such a shame. In doing some of the reading in our previous episodes, we did find out, and April asked me about this because she watched a couple of these with me while we were getting prepared. She said, "Did this show have any meaningful conclusion?" And I said, "It didn't. It just ended
Yes.
because NBC decided to. I think we talked about this in our previous segment. They decided to create a 60 Minutes like competitor to put in their time slot, and so they canceled Voyagers to do it instead of putting it in a different slot. And then that news program completely failed, and then Voyagers had no chance to be ever revived. Yeah,
Well, then our star went on to something else, right?
right.
Wasn't it? What was that?
Wildcats or something like that.
Yeah, it could be.
It was.
I don't know what Jeffrey went on to, but
I
Phineas moved
yeah,
on. Yeah, Mr.
yeah.
Hexam. Yeah, he what was that show he was in where he not Silk Stockings. It was
No,
no,
way
it
before
was
his time.
yeah, it was what was that? What was the one where
Hold
he was
on.
on the he was on
Miracle.
the show and he poor guy was playing with a loaded gun with
Right,
blanks
right.
and unfortunately hurt himself.
Right. Yeah. He fired
Pretty good.
a wad into his brain, and it caused a traumatic brain injury, and he died.
Yeah,
And yeah, I was trying to look up.
that was
Yeah,
it.
this stupid link I have is not at all helpful because
I can go
oh,
quick.
here we go.
Did you find
So John Eric Hexam died.
yeah, it ended that.
The show was called Cover Up.
That's it. And I watched that show.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
disappointed when he was very disappointed that show ended because
Yeah.
I think they did one of those tried to save it with new characters, but it never worked or it was done. It was such a tragedy.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And he was just goofing around with a revolver and went, "Arr!" and it shot the wad into his head. And it says here that it was the blast of the muzzle was enough to create blunt force trauma
Yeah.
to fracture a
Yep.
quarter-sized piece of his skull and propel into his brain, cause massive hemorrhaging, and then 6 days after the accident, he was declared brain dead and obviously
sad.
taken off life
Just sad.
support. Very, very sad.
Yeah, I definitely read those articles when they came out too because I was like, oh, this is just such a tragedy. But
Oh, I know.
but good body of work here. I mean,
Wonderful.
Voyagers, definitely worth watching, and especially this last episode we talked about. I mean, that may be on the must see list. I think.
Yeah, I'd say so without a doubt. So yeah, that caps it off. Voyagers is available on DVD because I lent it to Jonathan so he could enjoy it.
Too, by the way.
Well, I hope so. It's going to be worth quite a bit. But it is available. Yeah, there you go.
Flooded, but this is safe.
Oh, I'm so glad. It is also available.
Can you see all the stuff behind me?
Oh
from
my goodness. Yeah, don't break the fourth wall now. But it is available for digital purchase on Amazon, which is how I also own it. So with that, Jonathan, thank you for being here. This was great.
My pleasure.
I cannot wait for our next project, which you let slip will be the first season of the 1966 classic Batman series. But in the time in between, I know you're not a big social media guy. You don't even do Facebook Messenger. I have to text you. But if somebody really wants to interface with you, how would they reach you?
Look for me on LinkedIn, Jonathan Snedeker.
He is.
There's 5 of us, but you'll know my face when you see it.
You'll know his face. And then, of course, you can find me for the time being, regardless if this is in the future. Currently on Twitter, I am at the C3. And then, of course, for the Secret Friends Unite network, that is at Secret Friends U. My wife, April, and I, and Jonathan, is a part of the USS Grand Petoskey, the largest chapter of the International Star Trek Fan Club in the world. Excuse me, one of the largest. I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I also run the region, which encompasses Michigan and Canada. So again, for listeners in the future, if you're listening to this, you're a Trekker, you want to meet other Trekkers, drop us a line at a website of that name or other type of socials. And big thanks to all of our great Patreons who make it capable or make it possible for us to create this additional content. We will see you in the future for Batman. Get ready. All right. Good night, everybody.